Yananai, Yananai. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, in here, out there, wherever you are. It is good to be with you, to get to welcome and celebrate Shabbat together. What an incredible blessing that is. For folks who are joining us here in the Barish Sanctuary tonight, we are grateful for your help in keeping each other safe as we slowly navigate reopening. We ask that you refrain from singing aloud, but invite you to sing in your heart, to feel the prayers in other ways. You are welcome to clap, and we
or
would
dance
love to.
A little.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a dancing contest later in the service, but we are so thrilled to be here with you. For folks at home, if you've not had a chance to introduce yourself in the chat, please do so now. We are hoping that you, if you are making comments on our website, you'll click the gear and change your name so we know who is saying hello, who is wishing Mazel Tov to our B'nai Mitzvah this week on all the ways in which you are greeting each other. Everyone will be able to follow along in the prayer book pages put up on the screen, or if you're following along in the print book of Mishkan Tefillah, we will also share the page numbers with you. And now it is my honor to invite up Oliver Bloom and his parents, Sarah and Jeff Bloom, and Vincent Miller and his parents, Dina and Brian Miller, to lead us in the lighting of the candles beginning on page 3.
So we begin with the reading.
As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives.
Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Now Oliver and Vincent will light the candles. invite our families to be seated. And we continue welcoming Shabbat on page 20 with Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad, Ishmianu elam yuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. Likrat Shabbat, Lecho v'nelcha, Ki mekor ha'abraha, Merosh mikedem ha'nesucha, Sof ma'aseh b'machshavah tchila. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, Ki ba'oret uri hori, uri shir daberi, Kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. We now rise and face the entrance as we welcome in Shabbat as a bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha u'b'tzola, Toch emunei ha'segola. Boi chala, boi chala. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Penei Shabbat, Lekavela.
We continue with the Baruch Hu, which is found on page 28 as we remain standing.
Ya la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Baruch et Adonai, Amevora. Baruch Adonai continue with our prayer for the evening. The light is fading, the night is waiting for you and me. Let's rearrange the stars. The mystery lies in the color of the skies. When the words are on your lips that speak the evening into being. The sun's gone missing, the moon is whispering my name, but I have to listen close. The arc of its ascension commands my full attention. The sky provides a backdrop of purples and blues. The light is fading, the night is waiting for you and me. Let's rearrange the stars. Umavir yom, umevi laila, laila. Umavdil ben yom uben laila. Adonai tzivot shemo. El chai v'kayam. Tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Amari v'Ravi.
Pray with me in the middle of page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malachuto Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. We now invite Vincent to lead us in the Ve'ahavta, which can be found on page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלבתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך. וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים לחיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Yasher Koach, thank you, Vince. We turn all the way to page 123 for this next reading to guide us into Micha Mocha. The good in us will win over all the wickedness, over all the wrongs we have done. We will look back at the pages of written history and be amazed. And then we will laugh and sing, and the good that is in us, children in their cradles, will have won. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion. and that all of the sufferings will gather there and become song, ringing out into every corner of the earth from end to end, and the nations will hear it, and like the caravans in the desert will all to that morning throng. We continue with Mi Chamocha on page 40.
Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you, Adonai? Ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehila sefelet, nora tehila sefelet. Ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you, Adonai? Ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
Our next prayer, the Hashkivenu, which is found on page 42, asks God to lay us down in peace and raise us up to a life renewed. It is an expression of the trepidation that comes in the dark night, but also the sense of hope that comes from knowing that every dark night is followed by a bright morning. To prepare us for the Hashkivenu this evening, I offer this short poem by Philip Booth called Hope. Old Spirit, in and beyond me, keep and extend me. Amid strangers, friends, great trees, and big seas breaking, let love move me. Let me hear the whole music, see clear, reach deep. Open me to find due words that I may shape them into plowshares of my own making. After such luck, however late, give me to give to the oldest dance, then to good sleep, and if it happens, glad waking.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, ve'habitenu shomreinu lechayim lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, ve'habitenu shomreinu lechayim lechayim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom.
We come now to the Amidah, which begins on page 46. Amidah is Hebrew for the standing prayer, so we invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we invite Oliver to lead us in the prayers on the pages that follow. Page 46.
Adonai, Siver Tatifta, Ufia Gita Hiatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu Velohei Avotenu V'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Velohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Velohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Vehanora El Elyon Gomel Hasadim Tovim Vikonei Hakol Vizoher Seavovi Maot Ume Vigula Livnei Vneichem Lemon Shemo Bahava Melech Ozer Umoshiach Umagain Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Olam Adonai Mechayei HaKol Atah Rabba Choshia Meshit Baruch Umarid HaGal Hashem Mechakel Hayim Bechesed Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Ramim Somech Noflim Verofei Holim Umatir Asurim Umechayem Emanato Lishanei Afar Micha Mocha Bagurot Umido Melach Melech Memit Umechaye Umasmiach Yeshua Venaman Atah Lahayot HaKol Baruch Atah Adonai Mechaye HaKol Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh Ukdoshim B'chol Yom Yehallelu Salah Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
Yasher Koach Oliver. Everyone may be seated. We continue with another prayer not found in your book. This is the prayer for grace by the poet and liturgist Alden Solovey. He writes, "All I am, all I have, and all I'll become are present in this moment. Warmth and breath, love and compassion, silence and celebration, everything here, all gifts present. What then, God of all being, what then of my choices? What will I make of the space between this breath and the next? Will I bring laughter and light, hope and faith, wonder and strength? Will I stand in humble service for all of my brothers and sisters? Maker of heaven and earth, grant us the wisdom to choose lives of grace, lives of vision and understanding, seeing each moment as a choice to bless our companions with strength and wisdom, with honor and respect. Blessed are the gentle moments of grace." We continue with Shalom Rav, page 60.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael, Ha'amcha tasim le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael, Ha'amcha tasim le'olam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom מברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
We take a few moments now for silent prayer. If you can't think of what to say, make a list of 5 things you're grateful for today. I promise it will change your life.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. They can't sing, but they can clap.
They are definitely clapping. And I could feel everyone clapping at home too. We turn our prayerful attention now to those in our lives and in our community who are in need of healing, who are in need of refu'ah shlema, a return to wholeness, shlemut. We think of those who struggle with the illnesses we know about and the illnesses we can't know about, the pains we can see and the pains we cannot see. Think about those who are struggling with chronic pain, chronic illness, with addiction, who are in recovery, those who are struggling, and we think of the ways that we can offer them strength and support even from afar, through our prayers, through our kind words, through our helping hands. We think of Robin Beckwith, Marcia Block, Bradley Borden, Melba Berman, Ruth Bernazian, Jennifer Carey, Sammy Cherry, Adina Cohen, Michelle Cohen, Miles Cohn, David Kottner, George Ann Goldenberg, Ann Graubart, Shepard Harris, Jerry Hooks, Richard Jackson, Sarah James, Mindy Kronman, Al Levine, Lawrence Levy, Barbara Naples, Mark Schultz, Edward Simmons, Dorley Skelton, Mervat Tadrose, Angelica Taylor, Mike Thomas, Marcia Tushita, Roger Williams, Chaim Leibush, Vevel Ben Sheva, Gelka Nechama Bat Leba Chaya, Shimon Ben Esther. And we're thinking of all who are suffering with physical illness, emotional distress and pain, and those battling COVID-19. We offer these words of healing and wholeness. Misha Beirach, page 253.
Misheberach Avotenu Mekor Habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
A few brief announcements for this Shabbat. As a reminder, our traditional Saturday chapel service will begin at 10:30 a.m. on the Proler Chapel stream and on our Facebook. For those seeking to join us for the bar mitzvah, also at 10:30 a.m., please make sure to click over to the Barris Sanctuary stream on our website only. This Sunday is another of our online trivia nights with your friends at Emmanuel. Games begin at 7 p.m. Registration is required on our website. Our sisterhood and its new traditions gift shop will host a Hanukkah market on Sunday, November 22nd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. outside and socially distanced. Please wear a mask and come support our sisterhood as you buy everything you need for these holidays. Emmanuel is currently in phase 3 of our reopening plan, which allows for some in-person Shabbat worship. Registration is required, and it's due the midnight of the Thursday prior to a Friday night service. More details can be found on our website. We will continue to communicate if our status changes. For those present here with us in the Barris Sanctuary, we're going to ask that you please remain in your seats at the conclusion of the service tonight so that we can dismiss everyone in a way that will maintain social distancing. Thank you. We had this running joke when I was in rabbinical school, my classmates and I. It was about the phrases that Reform Jews, and especially Reform rabbis, love to say. We had a list going of the most ubiquitous terms that would come up over and over. Things like informed choice and the Pew Study of American Jewish Life, which had recently come out and which seemed to make its way into almost every lecture. We called it a drinking game, but that just meant that every time a student would answer a question with the words Tikkun Olam, half the class would silently take a long swig from their water bottles. I had a classmate who grew up Orthodox who thought it was particularly funny how often Reform Jews say Shehechianu. In Orthodox settings, it is used in very particular circumstances, but in Reform Rabbinical School, finished your third year's first exam, let's say a Shehechianu. Finished your last exam of third year, another Shehechianu, and so on. My friend used to joke that there's nothing a Reformed Jew won't bless. Of all the terms that came up repeatedly, there was one that stood out to me. Perhaps it was second in frequency of use behind only Tikkun Olam. It was a quote attributed to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. I felt as if my feet were praying. These words, which Heschel wrote about his experience marching with Dr. King in Selma, came to be applied by my classmates and even my professors to any action of social consequence. If you volunteered at the soup kitchen, your feet were praying. When you voted, you were praying with your feet. Spoke on a panel about healthcare reform, you were praying with your feet even though you were sitting down the whole time. The phrase began to lose all meaning. It had become a general way of expressing that feeling of unique Jewish pride in doing something that mattered. This is nice, but I don't think it's what Heschel was talking about. First of all, we were getting the quote wrong and shortening it significantly. The full quotation goes like this. For many of us, the march from Selma to Montgomery was about protest and prayer. Legs are not lips, and walking is not kneeling, and yet our legs uttered songs. Even without words, our march was worship. I felt my legs were praying. On March 21st, 1965, Martin Luther King Jr. led 3,200 civil rights demonstrators on a freedom march from Selma to Montgomery to submit a voting rights petition to Governor George C. Wallace. This march was an important step toward securing the Voting Rights Act. But this was the third attempt at such a march. The first two had been met by state troopers. One of those attempts came to be known as Bloody Sunday, with marchers beaten and tear-gassed on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. In this third attempt, the man standing a few people over from King was his friend, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. The late rabbi's daughter, Susanna Heschel, writes that she was only a young girl when her father went to Selma, but she can still recall kissing him goodbye, watching him get into the taxi to go to the airport, and wondering if she would ever see him again. When he returned home, the family's fear morphed into pride and an exhilaration at what had been accomplished that day. This is what Heschel writes about in his quote. His act of protest was for him a deeply spiritual experience akin to the most heart-wrenching and transformative of prayers. Heschel had written a book about the prophets and their call for justice, a book which had become as popular amongst the black leaders of the civil rights movement as it was in the Jewish community. In it, he talks about the difference between the ways injustice affects the average human and the way it agitates the biblical prophet. He writes, to us, a single act of injustice, cheating in business, exploitation of the poor, is slight. To the prophets, a disaster. To us, injustice is injurious to the welfare of the people. To the prophets, it's a death blow to existence. To us, an episode. To them, a catastrophe, a threat to the world. When Heschel marched with King from Selma to Montgomery, he felt as though he was in a congregation of prophets, 3,200 strong, people of all faiths and skin colors who risked their lives because injustice was, to them, a catastrophe, a threat to the world. I think what rubbed me the wrong way when my classmates misquoted this praying with my feet line is that sometimes what they meant is that for them, this was prayer. They felt like their acts of service and justice were more meaningful than anything they encountered in the sanctuary. When Heschel wrote that his legs were praying, he was not saying that he would rather march than pray. He was a deeply spiritual man. He wrote movingly about prayer, and he understood that the prophets, even when they criticized the Israelites' rituals as empty because they were divorced from moral action, these prophets did not mean to stop doing ritual. When Isaiah says that God does not desire the fast of Yom Kippur, but rather a fast that looses the bonds of wickedness and lets the oppressed go free, he's not actually saying to stop fasting. Rather, he's suggesting a both ritual and moral exactitude, both prayer and purpose. For Heschel, a man who loved to pray, the march from Selma to Montgomery was a new prayer, new wordless melodies to the rituals he already knew that opened up new possibilities in his spiritual life. Prayer finds new meaning when we let it live in our actions and not just on our lips. Traditionally, a Jew prays 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. The Talmud describes that each of these prayer services can be attributed to one of the 3 patriarchs. The Shachrit, or morning service, was invented by Abraham, for the Torah says, and Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood, when he argued before God for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. Isaac invented mincha, or afternoon prayer. As it says in this week's Torah portion, Chayei Sarah, Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening, on the day that he met his soon-to-be wife, Rebekah. And Jacob created Ma'ariv, or the evening prayer, when it says, and he encountered a place where he would lie down and dream his dream of angels and ladders. Not only does this rabbinic myth describe for us the supposed history of the Jewish tradition of thrice daily prayer, it also, I think, tells us something fundamental about the different ways that we can pray. The rabbis, like these three patriarchs and their service, the rabbis linked these three patriarchs and their services through the use of three verbs. Abraham stood, Isaac meditated, and Jacob encountered. Each of these gives new illumination to the kind of prayer that Heschel was talking about, the prayer where faith and action meet. Abraham amad, he stood, from that same root as amidah. He stood up to God. Unafraid and with moral certainty, he offers one of the most radical prayers of the Bible. Shall not the judge of all the earth do justly? He calls God to account. There are moments when our lips and our legs are praying that we stand with this kind of certainty, that we declare in an unwavering voice what is right. This is the prayer of Heschel and King marching in Selma, the declaration that injustice could be overcome by the power of our marching. Jacob's prayer is entirely different. He yifga b'makom, he encounters a place. Makom can mean place, but it can also be a name for God. This is the unexpected encounter with the infinite. This is the prayer that comes from wonder and amazement, from beautiful views or happy or terrible news. As Heschel said on a different day, prayer is our humble answer to the inconceivable surprise of living. It is the word in the service that spoke to you, though it had never spoken before. It is the moment where you are hiking and all of a sudden you are crying and you cannot exactly identify why. This too is prayer. Prayer without liturgy, without planning, without pomp or circumstance. Maybe this is what Heschel felt when he got home from the march and whispered quiet gratitude to God for sending him out safely and bringing him home safely too. But Isaac's prayer is perhaps the most interesting. His verb is sicha, which means to meditate. He went out into the field to think. But sicha also means to converse. Maybe Isaac went out to converse with God, to have an intimate one-on-one conversation. Unlike Abraham, who surprised God with his tenacity, unlike Jacob, who is surprised by God, Isaac is there to talk, to take, and to give. Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the former chief rabbi of England, who passed away this past week. The Jewish world lost a great scholar and thinker. I want to honor him by sharing his words on Sicha, on Isaac's conversation. He writes, how appropriate, therefore, is the fact that Isaac is seen praying immediately prior to his first encounter with the woman who was to become his wife. Abraham and Jacob are alone when they pray. Isaac is just about to meet the woman with whom he will share his life. For him, prayer is the prelude to a human relationship. Our openness to God shapes and is shaped by our openness to other people. Sacks continues, a genuine human conversation is therefore a preparation for and a microcosmic version of the act of prayer. For in prayer, I attend to the presence of God, listening as well as speaking, opening myself up to a reality other and infinitely vaster than my own, and I become a different person as a result. Prayer is marching, prayer is hiking, but prayer is also the conversation between people. Prayer is when all of a sudden we stop seeing each other as things and we recognize in each other's eyes the image of God that resides there. What Martin Buber calls the I-thou relationship to which we should aspire. Prayer is when we can meet someone with whom we disagree and acknowledge them in the fullness of their story and their experience. Prayer is two men of different faiths, Heschel and King, who have been friends for years, marching arm and arm. Prayer is the relationships we build where God is animated through the way we talk to one another. We live in a moment that needs our prayers. Not just our words in services, but the prayers of our legs. And not in the trite way that my classmates sometimes meant it, but in the deep and transformative sense that Heschel meant. We live in times that ask us to stand like Abraham and declare what is right. We live in times that ask us to wonder, like Jacob, and to encounter what is possible and what is new. And we live in times that ask us to converse, like Isaac, to meet others across lines of difference and to affirm in each other the wholeness of our humanity. May we rise to meet this moment. May we find the words that will speak to who God needs us to be. And may our legs carry us like eagle's wings to acts of justice and love. May the words of our mouths and the prayers of our legs be acceptable to you, Adonai, our rock and our Redeemer. We continue now with Aleinu L'Shabeach, which can be found on page 282. We invite you please to rise as the ark is open.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 287. ונאמר והיה אדוני ומלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We take a few moments now for silent memory. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we've drawn into our hearts with our own. Zikronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. Our hearts go out in sympathy to the families of Neil Goldenberg, Irving Corbin, Stanley Tenenbaum, and Jarrell Spear, who were laid to rest in recent days. We also recall the yard sites of Maury Abramson, Josephine Alessandro, Sophie P. Alexander, B. Mike Atlas, Robert Axelroth, William Baker, Blanche Berend, Lenore Berenberg, Meyer Berman, Herman Black, Stanford Kahn Blum Jr., Lindsay Ann Brasher, Max Brockstein, Sasha Broniatowski, Joseph Broniatowski, Sally Broniatowski, Sandra Joseph Kaplan, Pearl Friedman Cohn, Hattie Cohn Abrams, Louis S. Colby, George Du Bois, William Feldman, Flora Fine, Milton Friedman, Edwin Friedis, Evelyn Friedman, John J. Gates, Philip Lauren Gerson, Sadie Ida Goldgar, Willie Mae Goldstein, Aaron Goodman, Leon Green, Claude Gruen, Rose Handler, Jacob Aaron Harris, Nathan Harwood, Irving Hefter, Orville L. Henderson, David Hooks, Jack Robert Horn, Celia Rachel Horwitz, Sadie Kahn, Fred Kesselman, Nan Levy Kleiman, Gershel Kozaglad, Molly Cotlin, Sam Lack, Sarah S. Lack, Harold Howe Lapidus, Eleanor Waldman Lenski, Harold Leonard, Henry Lesky, Gertrude Mosias Levine, Harry Lewis, Eddie Lieberman, Nanette C. Lipper, Ruth May, Harry Mellon, Joe Merson, Anita Meyer, Margot Meyer, David Milner, Lillian Nelkin, Ann Nimzinski, Jerome Frank Nisenson, William Peskin, Elise Phillips, Raymond Plotkin, Selma Rausch, Raymond Reiser, Sarah Ribnick, Abe Rabinowitz, David Rosenberg, Marcelo Rosenblum, Louis Rosenzweig, Bessie Mass Rothstein, Marlene Rubenstein, Israel Rudy, Myron Sandler, Stephen Schechter, Mary Ethel Schechter, Ruth Schwade, Felice Marks Schwartz, Richard Sebel, Max Scheinberg, Doris Cohen Shemtob, Rose Scher, Melvin Silverman, Cecilia Silverman, Marvin Simon, Louis Slusky, Joseph Spiegel, Isidore Spitz, Dorothy Strellis, Jonathan Allen Terrell, Bertha Teiser, Lily Weinstein, Etta Weinstein, Dorothy Whittles, Paul Joseph Zimmerman, and Sam J. Zimmerman. As we recall them, we join together as one community and rise for the words of Mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yitgadal v'kadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma tivrach chutei ve'al michma chutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv ve'imru amen, yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam u'mea maya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei kudsha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'ne'emata, ta'amiran be'ama v'imru amen, yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Osei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Please be seated. We turn now to our Kiddush, and we invite Oliver and Vince and their parents over to these tables to lead us in Kiddush and Motzi. And so we'll have Oliver and Vincent pick up their Kiddush cup. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei pari hagafen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, be'ahava uvratzon, hinhilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit. Ki hu yom tehila lemikraye kodesh, zecher litziyat mitzrayim, kivanu v'harta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. And now we ask you to uncover your challah to get ready for motzi. Two beautiful challahs. Ready?
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
You may return to your seats. Our closing song, Gesher Tsar Me'od, can be found on page 353. The entire world is but a narrow bridge, but the most important thing is not to be afraid. Kol ha'olam kulo, Gesher Tsar Me'od, Gesher Tsar Me'od, Gesher Tsar Me'od, Kol ha'olam kulo, Gesher Tsar Me'od, Gesher Tsar Me'od. V'ha'ikar, lo לפחד כלל. והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. יאי ליי ליי ליי, יאי ליי ליי ליי, יאי ליי ליי ליי, כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד. והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. יאי ליי ליי
God, who is the one we talk to in prayer and who speaks to us in our daily lives, help us to find the words we need to become the people we need to be. Help us to stand up when we need to stand up. Help us to encounter when we need wonder. Help us to converse with those who are different than us, those who need our help and our hearts. Help us to remember that even when the bridge is narrow, we don't have to be afraid. We thank you for the gifts in our lives, and we say together, Amen.
Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.